Well, good morning. Thank you for coming. And my name is Jen. And today I have a very near and dear to me kind of talk to share with you. And it's really around recovery. And I'm calling it the 5 golden hooks. And if you read the little marketing piece that went out, you get it. But I'll explain it in a few minutes. Now, I was pretending I wasn't old there for a minute. Okay, there we go, much better. So I'm going to start by saying that I'm a big fan of story. And I think that everyone has a story to tell, whether it's how you met your partner, how you discovered the thing that sparks joy, the line of work you fell into, or, whatever it is that shapes your character. Joseph Campbell said that we're hardwired to tell stories. Basically, it's how we're made. It's how we come to understand the world and our place in it. The stories that we tell about ourselves are incredibly powerful and can help us get through difficult times, or conversely, they can keep us locked in a prison of our own making. So our story is really powerful, really important. And I can't help but think of when Rinpoche talks about the performative utterance, so we kind of need a story and to speak and to tell our truth. And in recovery meetings, we're encouraged, and by encouraged, I mean it's almost a necessity, a requirement to share our stories, experience, strength, and hope. They're a critical component to the healing process, and they're strands of a larger story that we're telling about ourselves and creating together. The more we hear other people's stories, the more we recognize ourselves in them. And we're inspired by them. And we realize that we're not alone, and that we belong, and that we have things to do together. In the 12 steps of the Buddha's path, and these are some things I'm going to reference, these books, 12 Steps on the Buddha's Path, the Lotus Sutra, around which all of this hinges. I think I quote from the teacher-student relationship and refuge recovery, but it's super low key. This is not scholarship here today. This is experiential mostly. So I had a lot to say. So I'm sorry if it goes on and cuts into lunch, but I'll do my best. I felt like I could just go on for an hour, hours. In 12 Steps on the Buddhist Path, Laura S. writes, although the details of our stories might vary, emotionally, we all have the very same story, and we benefit each other by honestly sharing and hearing that story. And as I said, I like this idea of story so much as a catalyst for transformation rather than kind of coming to sobriety or coming to a sense of awakening through reason. It's not that reason and rationality doesn't have its place. And yet, I haven't known of a single addict who found their way to sobriety through reasoning it out and weighing the pros and cons. I think that's called being normal. I also see the recovery journey as part of a bigger story of personal transformation that echoes the Buddha's path to enlightenment. It's a story of how not just I, but we all come to recognize suffering and the way out to a state of joy and freedom. So over a handful of darshans and discussions of my own recovery journey, Rinpoche asked, what simple Dharma truths did I find helpful? What might we say to someone to pull them up when they're down? And that's what I'm going to share with you today and what I'm calling the 5 golden hooks. Like just things that kind of steer us back onto the path, right? Kind of like somebody goes, no, don't go that way. You're getting off track, and kind of pulls us back in. They're engaging and they kind of stay. And all of that ended up being framed. And this is always a surprise. When writing a story, it's an artistic process. And like, I wish I was that person who could sit down and go, well, I know what this is going to be, and I'm going to outline it. It's going to be like this. But actually, I don't know what I think until I sit down and start writing. So until I start telling myself, what is the story here? I don't really know, because it kind of goes into the next moment. But I found a parable in the Lotus Sutra that ended up being the sort of piece of sand around which this is spun. Anyway, as I said, this is going to be more personal than scholarly, but I have relied on Rinpoche's Dharma talks, Conversations from Darshan, and these books sitting here. So with that, if you don't mind, I'll share with you a little bit of my recovery journey. And I promise that this isn't like confessional or shock. I've edited out all the gory details and highly compressed it. So it's family friendly. Where I was. And this is just a sliver. In December of 2020, my life as I knew it was coming to an end. After 22 years of marriage, the relationship fell apart in a pretty spectacular way, kind of like the TikTok of Elon Musk's last, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. The rocket ship with a wide field of debris. That was my marriage. It was 10 years in the making. It didn't happen overnight, as you know, if you've ever been in a relationship. Would that it happened so quickly. And it was packed full of bad behavior and unresolved resentment, and fueled by drugs, alcohol, sexual misconduct, emotional dysregulation, debt, perimenopause, fuck yeah, and a fascination with all things Esther Perel. And it was like putting a Mento in a bottle of Coke. So, yeah. So we came close to separating some years before we actually decided to rip the Band-Aid off, around about the time my daughter was starting middle school, but we were still too attached to the things that we loved. Not necessarily each other, but the things we loved. The house, the yard, our privilege, the memory we had of each other at another time. And we were afraid of what we might lose, and we were afraid of what we didn't know. And then the chance to do something different changed in an instant. It's like the universe said, okay, you guys are talking about separating, do it now. And we didn't because we were lazy and scared. And then this shit hit the fan. One afternoon, my partner was carjacked and assaulted in broad daylight in front of a crowd, not one of whom came to her rescue. The guy put a gun to her head and pulled the trigger twice, but the gun wasn't loaded properly. They fought, he kicked her in the gut. She hit him with a bottle of water that she had taken to the gym and broke his nose. He fled in the car and went on to murder 2 other people before being caught. I had to stay and help her get through the trauma, the loss of her job and identity, rage and grief and debilitating panic attacks, rescuing her in the middle of the day in a parking lot, pulling her out of the closet. And this isn't her story, it's just a context, you know, like how quickly things change in a moment. You thought it was fucked up before? Excuse me, I know we're in the temple, but our teacher gives us wide berth. He says it so I can. It's just providing context, right? This happens. You don't ever leave the house thinking this is what it's going to be like. You don't think your child's going to die before you, or that your dog's going to get hit by a car, or that your partner's going to get carjacked. Only one of those things happened to me. But I remember thinking, oh my God, I will never get out of this now. And that filled me with shame to have that thought. I didn't care. I loved her. I wanted to care for her. But I felt so profoundly trapped now. There would be no way I could ever live that down if I left. So I stayed even longer. And there were consequences to that, obviously. So I could tell you that I no longer recognized her, which is for real. And I went to the hearing and I told everybody in court and the judge and the man there who had basically changed the person that I knew entirely to somebody else, if only temporarily. But I also, it's equally true that I no longer recognize myself. I lost my way, I lost my boundaries, and with them, my moral compass. Everything, eventually I moved into the spare bedroom where I worked by day and drank by night, like good writers do. I drank this, I have to tell you, this box wine that comes with a spigot. It literally dispenses like the water cooler. I'm like, oh, yeah, this is great. Glug, 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 glug. You know, I mean, it's like, and, you know, and it would last more than a night. So that was exciting too. I went to doctors, you know, for pills, for anxiety, for depression, for my heart palpitations, for injections. And I even went under the knife to fix things that I thought would make me beautiful again because I was no longer recognizable to myself. I hated myself. I thought it was ugly. I said horrible things to myself. So night after night, I went, you know, for years, I went to bed wasted. I'd wake up sweating, stinking, just a wretched mess, called out of this sort of thick, heavy stupidity of dreamless sleep. Why? Why? What was calling me? Like I didn't want to wake up. I didn't want to be here. I tell myself every morning, no more drinking, I'm done for reals. And then that night, back to it. Just like that. Is the used car salesman in my head. It's okay. Do try 2 glasses of wine. Since when? 10, yeah. Whatever. At night after night. I hadn't let it go. Bottom line. I wanted to die, but there was a child in the house. And so I did what every good passive aggressive person does is I'd pray to die in my sleep because that wouldn't be messy. And then I couldn't be blamed. It's great thinking. But instead, I'd wake up again and again to my shame and pain and disappointment. So how did I get here? How am I not dead? Or as Rinpoche asks, how did the hand move from here to here? But that's probably another talk, but I'll touch on it. And just as importantly, how do we reach each other? How do we share Dharma truths that are helpful and not hurtful? Because to say to somebody who's depressed, well, you know, yeah, you're hurt, you know, that's the nature of samsara. Thanks. How about I punch you in the throat? Or, you know, somebody's lost their child or spouse. Well, all things come and go. Okay. Yeah. You know, we can be shitty like that. It can happen. And not necessarily intentionally so, but we need to be skillful. So anyway, that's the backdrop for today's talk that I'm calling the 5 golden hooks, or messages that grab us and slowly pull us out of a darkness of confusion. But first, and I am teasing the lead, I know this is bad journalism, but I want to talk about a few terms of art and say a few things about addiction and recovery. Because not everybody knows, you know, what is addiction, right? I mean, there are all the usual suspects, weed, you know, substance abuse, that kind of thing. You may have heard Rinpoche talk about the definition of insanity, kind of when you keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Well, that's the life of an addict every day. And people who are addicted often feel crazy because they can't stop their behavior. They don't know how to stop. In Refuge Recovery, Noah Levine says, addiction is the repetitive process of habitually satisfying cravings to avoid, change, or control the seemingly unbearable conditions of the present moment. A process that provides short-term gain or relief, but long-term harm for the addict and everyone around them. And I would say also, and it's embedded in his definition of addiction, And it's subtle, but addiction isn't just about using substances. If you come to our mindful recovery and healing, you probably have seen inside here, you know, kind of like how we position ourselves as being a little bit different. And that addiction can be anything that we use to avoid or change or control, like anger, power, like being the center of attention, or needing to be liked by everyone, like sex or money, risk-taking, gambling, perfectionism. No matter what form it takes, the end result is always the same. It's great suffering for ourselves and everyone else around us. So recovery then is a process of healing from the underlying conditions that lead to addiction and stay in the present moment, whether it's good or bad. Because if you're an addict, if you're happy, you drink. And if you're sad, you drink. You just need, it's so uncomfortable to be in our skin. To be in recovery, we have to abstain from indulging in our cravings. We also have to stop clinging to our addictions as a way to cope. So there are internal and external habits that have to change. In Buddhism, this turning away or abstaining from harmful behaviors is called renunciation. And it's the first step on the path to awakening, together with taking refuge. Just humor me here, but what do we mean by refuge? A refuge is something we go to for shelter, for safety, for reliability, and happiness, even. But whether we're addicts or normies, what we have in common is looking for refuge in worldly things, relationships, parents, stuff from Amazon, social music, ayahuasca, our own bodies. Some of these can be good and some bad, but all of them are ultimately impermanent, and this too brings great suffering. When I say great suffering, I laugh because it's sort of, it feels like you landed on the Monopoly square. Go directly. Oh, you landed on great suffering. Go directly to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that we are more similar than we think. And all of us in some way are recovering from some kind of insane expectation or shared delusion that the things of this world are going to protect us and bring us happiness. And despite the logic of it, despite our knowledge of seasons, cycles, accidents, and sickness, somehow it still surprises us when that inevitable disappointment comes. And so it's like we have a shared delusion in this world, which is also why we say in our, not that I'm like shamelessly pitching our recovery group, but everybody's welcome. So back to the question of how did we get here today? Well, before I could admit that I was powerless over my addiction, something before that had to happen, right? Admitting you're powerless or trying to reach out to others for help implies that something else has happened. Like you've got your feet under you. But normally, what happens when you don't have your feet under you and you're trying to figure it out? And Lama refers to this as the 0 step. You say to yourself, this shit's got to stop. That is deeply admitting a problem and having a desire to stop the behavior. You don't know how you're going to do it. And frankly, you probably don't even believe you can, but you will try. So that's when the real work begins and it gets real. We see the mess that we've made, the hurt we've caused, and maybe we've wrecked our body or broken someone's trust, lost jobs, homes, kids, friends. Our lives were unmanageable, great suffering. And now our coping mechanism has been taken away. So that is so not fun. It's got nothing. It's just the stinging lash of the wreckage of your life to clean up. As Lama said to me, the rock may have landed at the bottom of the riverbed, but the ripples continue. The path forward is very difficult and it's easy to give up and relapse. And now, finally, we get to the meat of this. So in thinking about my own grief and recovery, here are the Dharma truths that have helped me. The first hook. The house is on fire. In the Lotus Sutra, there's a parable, and it goes like this. In a certain kingdom, there was a great elder. He had many fields and many houses in his kingdom. On his property was an old mansion that was decaying and falling apart. It was home to many living things, insects, animals, squatters looking for shelter, and spirits. One day, while the elder was out, the house caught on fire. As the smoke and the flames engulfed the house, someone told him that his children had gone inside the house earlier to play with their toys. The elder was distressed and called to his children, but they were busy playing and couldn't see the danger or hear his cries. So the father ran into the burning house and yelled for his children to follow him to safety or they would die. But they continued to run through the house, not understanding the panic in his voice or the meaning of his words. What did die? It was a game. Without enough time to chase down each child, the father told his children there were even better toys outside the house, but if they wanted them, they had to go outside and get them. Hearing this, the children pushed and raced each other, scrambling out of the burning house into safety. This story hooks me for so many reasons. For one, when you're trying to change your life, you can feel alone and like no one understands what you're going through, or that somehow there's something wrong with you, but not ordinary wrong, wrong in a special way, which further isolates us from help we need. The story lays that bare. We are all children in a burning house, which is a metaphor for our minds and the world that we live in. Flash forward a couple thousand years and the children are on their cell phones, posting party pics, doom scrolling, gaming, shopping, ordering food, watching porn, swiping right. We distract ourselves from the flames of samsara. Contained in the flames are the three types of suffering: impermanence, physical suffering, and existential suffering, otherwise summarized as old age, sickness, and death. So the takeaway, no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. Your suffering is real and it fucking hurts. And the world is really hard and sometimes beautiful too, which makes what we lost, whether that's a marriage, a home, whatever, all the harder. The things of this world pass, and we're all just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Hook 2, reliance on a spiritual friend. After I decided that I had to quit, it was also immediately apparent that I couldn't do it by myself. My life was unmanageable. My so-called thinking mind had gotten me to where I was. So fundamentally, I was what we call in journalism an unreliable source, not to be trusted. After so many broken promises, what good was my word, my resolve to stay sober, my ability to be rigorously honest, or even know what to do next? I needed outside help. But even more, I needed to feel my life had meaning. So I called my old therapist, who I had fired because she said something outlandish like, I can't support that behavior. So if you're going to continue to do that thing, I can't do my thing. To which I naturally responded, fuck you, goodbye. And that stupidity set me back 10 years. So the next time I called, I approached it with a little bit more humility. And with her help, I was able to set and keep boundaries, relearning how to trust in myself and another person. I reconnected with my spirit, my spiritual home again, and very soon with my spiritual teacher, Lama Jinpa Rinpoche, who accepted me back as his student, gave me a home that wasn't on fire, and a Sangha family who made room for me. The father in the parable is Buddha, who also represents, with a capital T, teacher or higher power, something or someone who is smarter, wiser than we are, and who can help us. But whether you see Buddha as your Lama, whether you see Buddha or your Lama as your higher power, or God, or spirit, or a redwood tree, this source is a powerful symbol at work, reflecting back a state of purity, aspiration, inspiration, and emulation. And sometimes people struggle with the concept of God, Buddha, Guru Buddha, higher power, but both Buddhism and AA encourage generating faith. Alcoholics Anonymous refers to alcoholism as a spiritual disease because, and not, it doesn't just end there. You know, I mean, obviously there's physical addictions, you know, and so it's not denying that, but it's saying That's very rational, but there's also this other thing happening. Spiritual disease, because they believe that the root cause of addiction lies in a deeper dis-ease or spiritual malady that manifests in behaviors like restlessness and irritability and discontent, and a lack of connection to something greater than oneself, leading people to seek relief through alcohol rather than addressing the underlying emotional issues. So recovery requires not just physical abstinence, but spiritual awakening or change in perspective to address this deeper problem. In Buddhism, our belief in a higher power is faith in the spiritual wisdom teacher. That faith is required in order to reach full enlightenment. In the teacher-student relationship, please forgive my pronunciation, Jamgang Gontrol writes, in general, faith is the preliminary of all positive qualities, and in particular, generating the three aspects of faith is very important at the beginning of both following the wisdom teacher and being diligent on the path. In the Buddhist context, faith doesn't represent a blind acceptance of doctrinal truths, but rather faith refers to the confidence the student develops, and they begin to experience these truths for themselves. All right, hook 3. Start where you are. In Alice in Wonderland, the white rabbit asks the king where to begin reading the paper. King answers, begin at the beginning and go on till you come to the end, and then stop. Well, on the one hand, the king is laughably obvious and providing a literal response to the question, which is also how we tend to read stories, start to finish. On the other hand, it's also absurd. What exactly is a beginning? Because my therapist was a bodhisattva, she started working with me again, and our work together was deep and intense, as if no time had passed. There was no time for analyzing the whys and wherefores. It was, what do we do now? What's the next right step? It's very much present time. What happened before this moment doesn't matter. You could spend your entire life in therapy trying to figure out first causes. Why am I an alcoholic? Why didn't I feel heard? Why was I abandoned? And every single trauma was committed by someone who themselves experienced trauma. In an interdependent universe, there's no first domino. Her approach further empowered me to make change. I can't change what I've done, only what's happening now to make for a better future outcomes. In the same way, the father in the parable doesn't go in and say, who started this fire? Where are the flames coming from? Why is this happening? That would be absurd. He applies skillful means to respond to what's happening in the present moment and gets the children out of the burning house. So the takeaway, we can't change what happened, but we can choose to respond in better ways right now to grow our spiritual, emotional, and physical health. Hook 4, you have to do the work yourself. Having the resolve to quit, admitting our powerlessness, and putting faith in a higher power are like the preliminary practices in renunciation. They help us set our intention, have the right frame of mind, and stay motivated in our journey to sobriety or awakening. This is our support system that enables us to do the hard work of self-examination and working with difficult feelings. This work that's done over a lifetime. We read, we meditate, we practice, do Nundro. In the language of AA, we work the 12 steps over and over again. They're a roadmap to recovery. Rinpoche likens the Dharma to sandpaper, and that's sort of, we're just over time, slowly, gradually wearing down these afflictive emotions and reactions. So no matter who or what our higher power, we have to do the work. Yes, there's an end to suffering, but this liberation won't be handed to us. The Buddha said, I can't wash away your sins with water. I can't remove your suffering with my hand, like pulling a thorn from your body. Neither can I transfer my realization to you. The Buddha can only point the way. And so it is in the parable as well. The father, who is Buddha, doesn't perform miracles. He doesn't put out the fire. He doesn't go in and pull the children out himself. but he skillfully captures and redirects their attention. So while we do the work ourselves, we also rely on safe direction from our protector, our spiritual teacher, and we aren't infantilized, and we don't just stay children forever. We train in the path to realize wisdom and method ourselves and cultivate our loving compassion to help others. One day becoming spiritual friends, sponsors ourselves who work for the welfare of others. And this leads to the fifth and final golden hook. We are perfect as we are. Or as Rinpoche would say, perfect with some work to do. In our tradition, we believe that every person already has aspects that are the same as the Buddha's. Whether that's referred to as the seed of goodness that must be developed, or something that's already fully complete, like a pure awareness, or enlightened intelligence, as Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche called it, that's hidden or obscured by our delusions, or the nature of mind shared with the Buddha. Regardless of the definition, Buddha nature can become actualized and experienced through practice. With Buddha nature, our basic goodness, the hard boundaries between us, between the student and teacher, addict and normal person, begin to fall away. Our language becomes more about we and us rather than I. We begin to see our interdependence, our need for each other, the power of mirroring back our experience and stories. And this is why the teacher and the Sangha are so essential on the road back to sanity. The more we travel this path, the more stories we share, though they're unique to us, they become part of a shared story of recovery, all of ours. I would even go so far as to say that we become part of a much, much larger story that's more than 2,500 years old. Thank you for being here today. All right, let's go.
Well, I've got the mic here, but I think Charlotte will walk it around if anybody has a comment or question. Well, you just look ready, and I think you're good at that.
I've been given my job. Thank you, Jen. That was very helpful, and I appreciate your transparency and honesty. I was wondering, would you be willing to just enumerate the 5 hooks that you came up with?
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
Yeah, kind of just list them over again. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. The house is on fire. Reliance on a spiritual friend. Start where you are. You have to do the work yourself. We are perfect as we are, with work to do.
I actually don't know how much I have to say, except that I'm so grateful of your vulnerability and transparency. And I feel like these, at least for me, these are the lessons I learned the most, right? Because it's real. And you just don't go out in the world and people don't get this real. But this is life. I appreciate it, Jen.
Thanks, Linda. Thank you. I do, it is life, isn't it? I mean, every single person goes through this. Every single person has afflictive emotions. Every single person looks to things in the ordinary world to bring them peace and comfort. And every single person has been disappointed.
This might not matter, but I'm just wondering, in your story, could it, like, was the drinking a necessary component to get to the bottom from whence you grew? Or let's say you didn't start drinking and everything else was the same. The conflicts, the challenges, would it have been possible to learn the same lessons? Maybe it's a rhetorical question.
I think that's an amazing question. Had I not started drinking at 11, I don't. um, sadly, but I don't think it. You have to. I don't think we all have the same substances, or that we don't have the same things that we rely on, right? I mean, I think we all get there in different ways, is what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be alcohol, it doesn't have to be weed or something like that, or kind of the things that it can be. Like I had an aunt who lost a child before her. It was, so, and it broke her. She didn't have a drinking problem. She didn't have a drug problem. She had a grief problem. And she couldn't get over it. Her child died. And she was not the same. And if we think only in terms of sort of like an AA model, then there's no help for that person, right? I mean, like she would never go to that kind of a meeting. You need different structure. I have to tell you this funny story too. So when I lived in Atlanta, I went out for a run one day and I saw this smoke, literally, I'm not kidding, billowing out of my neighbor's house. And he was an older man. So I went over there, and in Atlanta, like you have these sort of like the kitchen doors right off the carports in these southern homes, and rapped on his door, and he didn't hear me. And it was one of those glass kind of screen door things, and it was unlocked. And I went in, and there was a fire on the oven. He had put a couple of hard-boiled eggs on to boil, and went into the back room and took a nap, fell asleep, and had taken his hearing aids out. So he didn't know. He didn't know what was happening. So I'm like, Bill, you need to get up. You need to get out of the house. Somebody's called the fire department already. And he came out, and he saw it, and I'm trying to push him out of his house, and he grabbed the sides of the door, and he wouldn't go out of the house. He knew the house was on fire, literally, but he wouldn't leave the house. And I think, I'm not sure that this story is related, but it strikes me as interesting because to leave his house, he knew where he was going after that. Like he had done something and set his house on fire, and the next place, and it's where he ended up, was in an institution, right? So that is clinging to a place and a time and an experience of life, and meeting that disappointment in an instant. So I don't know. I hope that answered. Not necessarily substance, but I think we all hit a bottom at some point. I would say everybody in this room is probably here for a reason, right? Something's not working out there. Turning.
I would also say that Bill's fire, the way that he responded to that, was a metaphor that there was something that was wrong, and he was refusing
Yes,
to leave the burning house.
I agree.
We get stagnant and we get stuck in our ways.
I love that, Jade. Absolutely. Absolutely. It was kind of heartbreaking. And you will know people, we lose people in recovery. We lose them because they can't change. They won't change. They can't make that commitment, whatever it is that they have to face. it's not worth it. And so they will die in the house.
Or we'll die getting stuck in our own ways.
Yeah.
By not evolving and growing.
Yeah.
What does it look like now? That you have some space from the substance addiction when you're still confronted, no doubt, with moments of dis-ease, of irritability, discontentment, with all of that, right? That restlessness. What, in sort of a very, like, in a subjective, experiential way, what does taking refuge in those moments look like? If not taking refuge in a worldly thing, what's the actual experience? What's the sort of like, there you are, you're feeling the disease. In the past, you would have turned to a drink.
Yeah.
Now you're there and you're witnessing it, right? You're seeing, yes, here it is, anxiety, stress, whatever it is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then what does that look like, the actual taking refuge in that moment?
Well, it's not rosy, and it's really difficult. It's really difficult to stay in the present with it. In fact, I don't know if anybody's here from Friday Night Recovery. It's a very difficult practice. To have unpleasant feelings come up and not run from them is astonishing, and it's difficult to, but there isn't a compounding that happens when you turn to the alcohol or you run away from something, because then you just kind of have a snowball effect, right? Just all sorts of shit just follows that. Then you're not paying your bills, or you lose your job, and then da-da-da. So there's a compounding problems that come with that. The problem still feels shitty, but it's cleaner, it's more direct, and it doesn't kill you, oddly, as much as we think it's going to. And so Friday, I think Friday night we did this little meditation, before we opened the meeting, and I was so moved because I had gotten triggered, and I was feeling very upset, and my usual kind of go-to one of three emotions that I go to on a regular basis: anger, jealousy, whatever one of those three came up. But this time, like, it's 1 out of 1,000 times, I didn't sort of like, I certainly didn't go to drink, but I also didn't go to fuck you, or, feel that sort of shutdown. I will distance. I will be like, hello, let it snow. I am the ice queen. And I didn't do that. So it was sitting right here, like a dog on my lap. And I just leaned into it. I can't even, my words are kind of wonky, and I thought, I just have to love my way through this thing. I'm gonna love this fucking feeling. I love you. That sounds weird, but it helped at the time. But it also made me cry, because it's probably the first time I took something negative and felt something positive about it. One time. I'll take it. I'll take it. Yeah, Donna.
Do you find that you've actually used these sort of as steps when you have sort of those feelings? Like, for example, maybe on Friday, did you sort of walk yourself through these as steps?
No. No,
you-
they're not really, they're not really steps that I don't see them as steps. I like your question. It's a good one. it's just that for me, it's more like if I'm feeling like down, this makes me like knowing that my experience isn't unique makes me feel less crazy, makes me feel more connected to people. Remembering that maybe one day there is this sort of idea that I am being, if this Buddha nature can grow and I can be kinder, wiser, more helpful to people, more like my teacher, those are things that keep me inspired and on the path, kind of like motivators. More like that.
In that last thing that you said, I was actually pointing to Jigme Lingpa.
Yeah.
The greatest thing you can do is change a negative thought into a positive one.
Do you think a mantra may be useful, like at a moment, trying to put a little space between an urge to consume something unhealthy or do something unhealthy? Does anybody talk about using a mantra to put that space in between an urge and an action?
That completely makes sense to me. It's kind of like you turn your mind inward and you're remembering your spiritual practice. So for sure, doing a mantra is powerful. I think it's definitely.
Jen, your talk just, I don't know what to say. It was just amazing. Put yourself out there like that.
Thanks.
So courageous.
Mhm.
Anyway, am I right in thinking that on Friday night you chose to accept that negative feeling
Mhm.
and embrace it and nurture it rather than fight with substance or fight with anger or fight it with whatever your third thing was, but to just embrace it and almost mother it
Mhm.
instead of trying to reject it, trying to run from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. I think so. It was a strange response, so I'm not like super articulate about what happened there, but some different transaction happened where I was not going to anger or shutting down or blame. But it's kind of like it's so old. It's always there. And it has always been there, kind of thing. Like very familiar. But also in time, see, like this is, I don't want to get too, but reacting to it is a habit as well. There's the habit of the feeling, and then there's the habit of the reaction. I haven't gotten to where the habit of the feeling is going away, but the reaction to it shifted. So that also makes me feel like there's some little bit of separation. It's not quite as sticky, right? A little bit of separation between that experience and self, right? Because we think of ourselves as, I am that thing. I am angry. I'm jealous. I'm competitive. Those are experiences, not, yeah. So.
So I was just thinking of something based on what you just said, and of course,
It's gone. That's my brain injury. It happens all the time. I wish I could remember. Maybe I'll remember another time. But I
Well-
think what you exercised was self-care.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Susan. And if you think of it, text me.
Susan, you have your hand up?
I, um, following on about the comment on using mantra, and I'm curious in terms of practice, the methods that are helpful. Is meditation helpful? Is it helpful to study? Is it helpful to interact with Sangha? Is it helpful to be with the teacher? So like Buddha Dharma Sangha, right? I'm wondering what is helpful. What do you use as a practice?
Thanks, Susan. All of the above and the 12 steps of recovery, the 12 steps of liberation. So it's, just in the same way that when, when you take refuge and you take your vows, you begin to work the path. It is exactly that. And that working that path is a combination of study and meditation and meeting with the teacher and doing service and engaging with Sangha and all the things. It's exactly the same because it's recovering. It's shifting from a worldly to a more spiritual, right, worldview, kind of episteme. And so recovery from substances or processes, it's the same thing. So definitely, thank you for the question. Meditation, study, reflection, working, we have steps. As I mentioned, the 12 steps of liberation is very similar to, it's parallel to but not one for one. Okay, slightly different with the Buddhist flavor. The 12 steps of AA. And then, of course, the group, it's being of service. And this is the thing, to make the story meaningful, because you can be completely stone cold sober and have a completely purposeless life. It can be mean. And that sucks. And that's sad. And, there are a lot of very rational people who I am like, I take my life any day over that, even though you haven't, you still have more money than I do. But, because my life has meaning, and that meaning is made together in telling our stories together and in working on a path together to feel better and share our joy and our wisdom. That's the best fucking thing of all time, I think. I'm in an F-bomb mood.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Jen. I loved your talks so much for so many reasons. But when somebody here asked you about, about drinking or using as, like if that was necessary, and then I heard you respond that there's such a variety of things that bring all of us here. And I just wanted to say that was just that answer really struck close to me because I just met someone today actually who was really down and out. And I recalled that what turned out the hardest things, sometimes it takes the hardest things to get us to start to look around and think, what can I do? And then as you go along, you start to realize that those hardest things make you understand things in a way that only hard things can. That's why those groups are so helpful.
Thanks a lot. As you know, I'm in recovery too, because we're in the groups together. So I'm also a recovering alcoholic. And yeah, I got a lot out of your talk, really. I'm a grateful alcoholic. I'm grateful that I am an alcoholic. And it always used to, for years, it would piss me off in AA meetings when people would present themselves as being a grateful alcoholic. But I wouldn't be sitting here if I wasn't an alcoholic. I mean, that was the one defining character defect that pointed out all of the other character defects and all of the other suffering in my life. And for me, when I was in the middle of my addiction, all I could think about was my addiction. It's like having blinders on. So I'm completely focused on getting the next drink, how crappy I feel the next day, how it's screwing my life up, but it's very myopic, very focused just on that. And when I got sober and, began to get a little bit of control over my alcoholism, and that veil started to come up, then I can suddenly see all of the other aspects in my life that need work and that needed me to address. I'm a people pleaser. I'm fearful all the time. I worry about what people think of me. I'm prone to anger in certain times. All of those other things that if I hadn't been an alcoholic, I'm not sure I ever would have realized that those are issues that are not only as important in my life as the alcoholism was, but that taught me that the alcoholism is really a symptom. I mean, I was seeking refuge in alcohol because that's all I had to seek refuge in. I didn't know any better. And drinking works. I mean, in the short term, it does that. It does stop the suffering. It doesn't stop the cause of the suffering, but it does stop the suffering, And not knowing any better at that stage of my life, I didn't realize that what I need to do is address the causes, not the manifestation itself. And so I'll leave you all with this. I mean, I'm firmly convinced that we're all alcoholics, essentially. I mean, it might not be alcohol that we're addicted to, but it's something else, And it's something that we need to work just as hard as an alcoholic needs to work on his or her alcoholism. There's plenty of people in my life that would really benefit from either being in this room or being in a 12-step program, and they don't have a substance abuse problem, but they've got issues that are derailing their life to the same extent that alcohol derailed mine. So again, I'm grateful that if I hadn't been a boozer and if I hadn't finally gotten sober and started to really see, oh my God, I've got some issues I've got to work through, I would never been in this room. So thank you very much. Fantastic talk.
Thank you, Joe. I think we agree, definitely. And one thing I would add, what I heard in what you were saying also, is that when you experience great suffering, you have a choice, right? And you choose to recover. You develop a heart. You develop really deep kindness and compassion and love. And you really open up in a way that is sometimes astonishing. You learn to love people in a way that you maybe didn't even know you were capable of. I think we call this bodhicitta. Yeah. So Yay.
Listening to you talk, it reminds me of the story. If you put a frog in water and slowly turn up the heat, it will die. It'll cook itself to death, right? And I feel like that's samsara. Most of us are sitting in the hot water and we're allowing it to be turned up and we die. If you drop the frog in hot water, then he jumps out. So I feel like when I hear you talk and I hear Joe talk, you've recognized that you're in hot water and you got the hell out. And most people don't do that. So it's admirable. And it hopefully it's something that we're all doing. We're going to jump out of the hot water.
Yep. Thank you, Linda. Yeah.
So superficially, the name got me here, the 5 golden hooks. Went, oh, I've never heard of that. That sounds awesome.
The marketing devil at work.
So there's that. Yeah. Also, as you repeated back the 5, golden hooks, it really made me think of a great short list to carry around in your wallet. When something comes up, they're like, it's a list of antidotes, that kind of like pulls you out of the moment, in some way that keeps you from falling into your old samsaric, habitual, behavior and belief system and stuff. So thank you very much for that. And like everybody else has said, thanks so much for revealing yourself in such a lovely way that lets us know you better as a person and perhaps be better people as well,
Thank you.
Hey, that was really inspirational. And at some point during your talk, you actually got me all teared up, and it was just like, okay, just don't lose it right now. Just don't lose it. And, at some point, I just kept thinking, like, this is really good to hear. It's, because a lot of us struggle with, our own personal bullshit. And some of us don't have courage to, say it like you do. And at some point it got me thinking, and I wish my dad were here to listen to this incredible woman speak, because maybe, he might have, gotten inspired to get help himself just by listening to your story. And I really appreciate it. I'm pretty sure we all really appreciate, you being here and telling your story and, moving us. It's so thank you, Jen, for, everything. It's really love your story.
Thank you so much. We all have a story to tell, and I look forward to getting to know yours as well. Okay. Yeah, I see you, Ella.
Anybody else?
All right.
So I guess I should say my adoration for you knows no bounds. And I think that is true. And I've been thinking about the word community ever since you challenged me to fix that sentence. And this is not going to be an adequate way to describe it, but I think what you just did is probably the best example I can think of community, is sharing your heart with us. And that may not be what you set out to do, but that is what you did. You shared your heart, and that is the ultimate definition of community. So for that, I thank you deeply from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Charla. And I do mean this. I really do love you guys. And my well-being is dependent on all of you. So off. You're like, thank you. Anyway, okay, goodbye. Love you lots.
So for dedication, due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. May the teachings of the Buddha flourish, and may the upholders of the teachings remain forever. May all migrators achieve happiness, and may they fulfill all their temporary and ultimate goals. Losang, magical display of the fall of the victorious ones, merciful giver of a stream of profound and vast instructions to the fortunate migrators, please remain always unperishing, unchanging, unfading. Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of objectless compassion, Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, Vajrapani, destroyer of the entire host of Mars, Sankapa, crown jewel of the snowy land sages, Losang Drakpa, I make requests at your holy feet. So we have a couple of announcements. Like always, I just wanted to mention, well, I'm going to say an announcement regarding accumulating mantras for our teacher. It's one thing that we do every year for Lama Jinpa. This year, we're accumulating mantras that are from the deity Tara, and it's Om Tara Tutara Ture Soha. And this mantra is very available online if you don't know how to say it. I don't expect you to remember what I just said. So we accumulate them, and then over time, after you've accumulated however many you feel comfortable with, we send them to Deb, and her contact is on the website and also in the Roar. And you tell Deb, I have done 1 million Tara mantras. Of course, I've already done 2 million, but but anyway, and then here at the temple, I know my nose is already big enough, but in the temple at the Tara shrine that some of you are aware of, but it's in the back of the temple, there's a Tara sculpture, and then there's some Tara tankas, and we'll have a little chair there and these marbles, and every time you do 100, you can put a marble in a clear glass vase, and then, but if you would turn in your mantra count to Deb, there's a phone number there, and Deb won't mind. You just leave her a message or a text. And then now that's my announcement. And then I wanted, because Susan's available online, I was going to request Susan, if you would say a little bit about next weekend. I believe it's next weekend. Yeah.
I'm blanking. I'm sorry. What's next weekend?
Maybe it's not next weekend. I might be mistaken. If you could say a little bit regarding Tenzin Choki's visit.
Okay, certainly. Yeah, we don't have the information available yet. I think Patty's going to send out an announcement within the next few days that will be a standalone email that I hope everybody gets a chance to read. But starting on May 8th is a program that Lama and Tenzin Choki are calling the Sustainable Service Program. And it is a series of trainings that will be held over the next year on a quarterly basis. So there are 2 modules that will begin on March 8th. There's a module in the morning, and I don't have, oh, wait a minute, yeah. The first module is about core values and exploring intentions. And the afternoon module is about building resiliency and empathy. And so those modules can be attended either one or both of them. The email that Patty's sending out will have the link to an entire program description that is on our webpage. It's you can access it just from the homepage. And there's also will be a link that Daniel West prepared for us on Eventbrite for registration. So you could register for this program either half day or the entire day. All the information is on the website as well as on Eventbrite, and will be in the email that will go out that is introducing the program. So that's on March 8th. There'll be, I'll talk more about it when we actually have something for you to look at. So I don't know, that's all I have to say at this point. So, and everybody is welcome. So this is, it's really, it's been prepared for Lion's Roar by Tenzin Chogkyi in consultation with Lama Jinpa. So this is a very special program to help us learn how to be of service in a sustainable way. We're going to have some tough years ahead of us. You know, we've got some tough days right now. Just listening to Jen's talk, right? We need to be of service to ourselves as well. So anyway, that's what it's about. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. This write-up's already been written, thankfully, and so it's very descriptive and easy to understand. I just need to make an image, a simple image. So I think it'll get out tonight, but we're working together. So if it's not tonight, it'll be within the next couple days. So that's all the announcement. Oh, oh, okay. This is good. We have more than one brain in the room. So thank you. Sue just reminded me there's going to be a half-day retreat. It was going to be on this March 2nd, or March 1st, actually, but now it's been changed to March 29th. 22nd. Oh my goodness. You know what? I don't have this in front of me later in the month, but please look at the Roar. Even though there's sometimes mistakes there, it's more accurate than me right now. So, yeah. The reason there's some changes is our teacher has a lot going on. And so it was March 29th. So, I don't mind people correcting me because I'm quite often wrong, but in this case, I was right. So I'm going March 29th. But at the same time, though I'm right today, I'm 50% wrong. So it's okay to correct me. March 29th. And I want to encourage anyone to come to that because it's so special. And he does it for 4 hours and it's for all levels. Like my concentration is very poor. So I always like to listen to him because he tries to speak to the things that distract us, the things that are difficult. And it's combined with Vipassana, which is analytical meditation, which we're all beginners in. It's just a great, and then seeing friends there makes it fun, especially if the friends bring treats. So, okay, so it's a call for treats. Okay, so I'm gonna look. I think Connor might have something. Oh, that's. Can they hear you, Connor? Okay. Okay, so I want to mention about a movie that's going to be here on February 8th, and it's at 6 p.m. and treats are welcome, drinks are welcome, donations are welcome. Oh my gosh. Well, you know, this doesn't apply to everyone online, but this is a very folksy operation here. And we're looking for someone here with a glue gun, but I'm letting you know so you feel included. All right. So friends, thank you for showing up because when you're online like that, you really make me feel like the room is full. And I think that's just great. And I love you guys and we'll see everyone next week.